Jalen Ramsey and the Dolphins are working towards a potential trade. And on this episode of Dolphins Today by Chad Sports, we are going to discuss the top 5 potential destinations and what the trade value may be for Jalen Ramsey. I am Nick Roloff, and we will start with the trade value because as good as Ramsey was for the Dolphins ever since they traded for him in the 2022 offseason, it is still not going to be a good haul for Miami. With him being 30 years old and his contract being interesting to the point where it's basically a one-year deal for a team taking him on because the money is not guaranteed for that said new team over the next 3 seasons after 2025. It sounds like Jalen Ramsey's trade value is most likely going to be a 3rd-round pick or a 4th-round pick. Now, that value might change based off what year the draft pick is in. If it's a 2026 draft pick and this trade happens in June, it might be a 3rd or 4th. If it's in 2025, it might be a 2nd-round pick if it's a contender offering that for Ramsey because the Dolphins' cap situation is not good if they trade him before June 1st, so they might require a higher draft pick from a team that wants Ramsey before the draft or on draft night. And I did want to share this quote as well before we get into the destinations. Chris Grier, speaking to the media on Tuesday, April 15th, said that Jalen Ramsey did not ask for a trade. So it doesn't make sense to me why Miami even is trading him in the first place. Now, there is a chance that he doesn't get traded. They did leave the door open for a potential return. But it is interesting to see the language that Grier and Ian Rappaport have used. But the part at the end is what I wanted to showcase. Not sure if he will be traded before draft. Could be on the draft, could be after the draft. We'll see. But don't miss it, folks. When Jalen Ramsey gets traded, or if he gets traded, we will go live here on the channel. Hell, maybe it'll happen while we're already live during the NFL draft. We'll be live for all 3 days. But if it happens before, happens after, we'll go live breaking down the Jalen Ramsey trade. So make sure you subscribe. Make sure you also click those notification icon and have it turned on to all, not just personalized, so you never miss a video or live show we do. Did want to showcase this here from Sports Betting AG, Jalen Ramsey next team odds. These are the top 5 teams according to them. And now these aren't the 5 teams that we will talk about on today's show, but the Las Vegas Raiders have the best odds to be Ramsey's next team. The Cardinals at number 2, Dallas at 3, Commanders at 4, and the Detroit Lions at 5. There were some other teams there at 6 or 7. Like the Chargers, like the Vikings. But these are the top 5 teams that some Vegas outlets have as Jalen Ramsey's next team. But with that being said, I am going to get into my top 5 Jalen Ramsey destinations. And we are going to start with the 5th team, so the least likely out of this list in my opinion, that being the Los Angeles Chargers. But I still do think they have a pretty good reason to go out and trade for Jalen Ramsey. You look at this cornerback room. It's interesting. They have not re-signed Asante Samuel Jr. He is still out there in free agency. They did bring in Dante Jackson, who played last year in Pittsburgh and was relatively solid. And they have a couple young cats entering their 2nd year, like Cam Hart from Notre Dame, Tarheeb Still from Maryland. Both of them had a very productive year last season. But I think if the Chargers wanted to go really into it here, folks, they might like to add Jalen Ramsey to complete that secondary room and have a balanced attack in that back end. And if you are Jalen Ramsey, I think he might want back in LA. Remember, he played in Florida, played for the Jaguars, then got traded to the Rams, and then got traded to the Dolphins. Maybe he wants to go back to LA. Maybe he likes living there. Maybe he still has a house there. So I think the Chargers could absolutely be an option. And remember, the verbiage is interesting here because they said the Dolphins are going to work with Ramsey to find the best possible spot. So once they have trade equity and value set in stone with the team, they'll talk with Ramsey where he'd rather go. And the Chargers are projected to be a competitive team next year. I think Ramsey might be interested by joining the Herbert-led Chargers. The next team on my list is going to be a team that was on the top 5 odds. It's going to be the Washington Commanders at number 4, a team that just made the NFC Championship game last year, and you could argue the secondary is what led them down. Their cornerback room is borderline kind of set, but it is interesting to see if they could trade for Ramsey. They may obviously trade for Marshawn Lattimore at last year's trade deadline. Mike Sanistril had a good first year as a rookie out of Michigan. Our good friend Iggy there in the nickel. But they also signed Jonathan Jones in NFL free agency, the longtime corner for the New England Patriots. But there could be interest by the Washington Commanders. I talked to Jack Sperry, our Commanders host here, and he said that he absolutely could see Adam Peters in the Commanders front office being interested in Jalen Ramsey. Plus, the Washington Commanders have enough money to pay Jalen Ramsey, take in that contract, and potentially keep him around long term. You looked at the Commanders last year. That offense was able to get them to the NFC Championship game. But the defense gave up a 50-burger to the Eagles in the NFC Championship game. They got cooked on the ground. They got cooked in the secondary. Maybe they ultimately look at this and say, hey, we'll trade a mid-round pick for Jalen Ramsey right now and add some defensive linemen in the draft, and maybe our defense is going to be good enough to get to a Super Bowl in year 2 of Jaden Daniels. But predict it for me. When this is all said and done, we get the notification that Jalen Ramsey is being traded. Where do you think it will be? Predict it for me down in the comment section. Pin comment on today's show. Next destination that I am going to talk about. Number 3, Las Vegas Raiders. Now, this was the team that had the top odds, according to Sportsbook AG, to be Jalen Ramsey's next team. I think it's very interesting to see a potential trade to the Raiders. And it makes a lot of sense because, my oh my, the Raiders' cornerback depth chart is absolutely horrific. Jacorian Bennett is a okay young corner, but him being your CB1, oh my. You obviously some other interesting names here, like Darnay Holmes at the nickel. They signed the former first-round pick out of Georgia, Eric Stokes, to be a depth piece. There is no clear-cut corner here. I mean, this is one of the worst cornerback rooms in the NFL. And we know that Pete Carroll loves his DBs, the new head coach for Las Vegas. Saw it with the Legion of Boom. He likes to have a good secondary on his football teams. So when you combine the fact that it's a big need for the Las Vegas Raiders, plus Pete Carroll likes DBs and wants to have a good secondary, it would make sense for the Raiders to potentially go out and grab Jalen Ramsey if the price tag is affordable, aka 3rd or 4th round pick. Now, the only question I would ask, would Jalen Ramsey want to be a Las Vegas Raider? Kind of spotty. It's not going to be a good team next year, even if they acquired Ramsey. So I'm not sure. Maybe he believes in Geno Smith and what the Raiders are building over there. Number 2 destination. Not my number 1, but number 2. It is the Dallas Cowboys. And I am going to talk about that potential fit. But before we get into the Cowboys, make sure you get your Dolphins draft hats. Chatsports.com/Dolphins draft hats. They have the cream color, the black color, the flat brim, the curved brim, the icon with the palm tree. They'll have all the better options. If you want to get the hat for draft night, now's your last chance to get it. Right now, chatsports.com/Dolphins draft hats. Links in the description and comments of today's video. Well, when you get back to the Cowboys, there could be some interest here because Deron Bland obviously is one of their top guys, but Trayvon Diggs, aging, injury concerns. No one knows when he is going to be back ready to play this upcoming season. Now, they have already traded for a corner this offseason. During free agency, they made a deal with the Bills to get former first-round pick Kier Elam, but he is one of the worst corners I've ever seen, and he's the single-handedly reason why the Chiefs beat the Bills this year in the postseason. So I could absolutely see the Cowboys swinging big for Jalen Ramsey. I mean, they're unsure of Diggs' health. They're looking to potentially draft a corner. I mean, when you think of the latest draft rumors, the teams that could snipe Will Johnson away from the Dolphins at pick number 13 have always been listed as the Dallas Cowboys, Las Vegas Raiders, if they got aggressive and took them at 6, or the San Francisco 49ers at 11. So to me, it would make sense for the Cowboys if they were going in on Jalen Ramsey. And our own producer extraordinaire, Justin Honore, when I asked him, how would you feel if Jalen Ramsey was traded to the Dallas Cowboys? He said it'd be a dream come true. 1A and 1B between Zeke and him in terms of Ramsey of being his guys. I could see the fit. I really could. I think Jerry Jones and Stephen Jones would be interested in making a splash move as well. They go offense in the first round, going with a wide receiver or running back. They go DB with a mid-round trade to Jalen Ramsey. I could see the Cowboys pulling that off. But the number 1 place I think is most likely to trade for Jalen Ramsey is the San Francisco 49ers. To me, this just makes all the sense in the world because you look at their cornerback room and it's not good. This is a team that is going to be trying to bounce back after a disappointing 2024 season where they did not make the playoffs and they want to get back to the postseason. I mean, their top three guys are Trey Brown, Renardo Green, and Diamador Lenore. Now, Lenore is a really good nickel, but they don't have a solid boundary guy. And I promise you, Trey Brown and Renardo Green aren't doing that. And remember last season, they had Charvarius Ward, who ultimately left in free agency. And I know some people might be wondering, well, why would they want to trade for an old kind of expensive corner like Jalen Ramsey if they could have just re-signed Ward? Well, I would encourage you to look up the story. It's a tragic one with Charvarius Ward, but him and his family just could not handle being in San Francisco any longer, and I don't blame them from that. But the 49ers have the cap space to take in Ramsey's contract. They have $39 million in cap space. They need a corner. I mentioned it earlier that they have been one of the top teams linked to Will Johnson and Jahdae Barron, the top two corners in this draft class. So I think the 49ers are probably the most ideal and logical fit for Ramsey to want to go there to try to compete in the NFC, but also the 49ers getting a player that would help them in a big way in that secondary. But when it comes to a Jalen Ramsey trade, I ultimately think a trade happens after the draft. I could see it happening on draft night. I could see it happening in day 2 or something like that. But with the financial aspect of the situation for Miami, it just doesn't make a lot of sense for the Dolphins to trade him right now. I'm serious because the cap number jumps $12.5 million for 2025 if you trade him before June 1st, which basically eats away at all of your cap space to sign free agents after the draft because you would be left with just barely enough money to sign your own draft class. So to me, I think a trade will happen after the draft, and it won't be finalized until post-June 1st. It also will allow teams to see, all right, we weren't able to address corner in the way that we wanted to during the draft. We know Ramsey's available via trade. We'll send a 2026 third or fourth round pick for Ramsey and get that need done. That's how I see it unfolding. But whenever Jalen Ramsey gets traded, make sure you're subscribed because we'll break it down.